this is Steve Gillmor. This is the Gillmor Gang. Owing to the massive amount of technical difficulties that we're having here, I'm just going to turn this over to the other folks. Robert Scoble, are you there?
Oh, yeah. I'm here. Just flew in from Seattle, where I was hanging out with Techstars startups.
That sounds good. And Kevin Marks?
Yes, I'm here. I'm at home as usual and very happy to talk.
Okay, and John Toshek?
I'm here. Good to hear you, Steve.
Yeah, great to be seen in this inflated way. It approximates my ego.
The pores make you look like you're in jail.
So I haven't had a chance, of course, to see or think about anything in the last week, so I have nothing to offer. Anybody else have something to say?
Well, I was playing with the Microsoft Surface last night with Steve Ball, who runs user experience for Microsoft. And do I have anything interesting to say, did you say?
About really. That, yeah. What about the Surface?
It's actually it's really well. The hardware is really well designed. I had no problem with that. Other than the screen is not as sharp as a Retina display, and so many of the reviewers poo-pooed that. But to me, I'm a big text reader, and it dramatically reduced the sharpness of the text and the readability for me. Other people might not notice or care. It did seem laggy in places, and that matched some of my reactions or some of the reviews that people have been talking about the Surface. But overall, the fit and finish, the design of it is very good. I think this gets Microsoft maybe not completely back in the game, but I can see that it would stop the bleeding and get people who are Office fans and Microsoft fans to consider staying in the Microsoft ecosystem rather than switching to the Apple one or to the Android one.
Do you think that the cost is an issue there, Robert? I mean, you mentioned that you wanted it to be under $200 or else it would be a failure.
I think it is, but it depends who you are. I mean, if you're an Office user, a hardcore Office user, you're already sort of prepared to pay that $300 for Office, and that's sort of where it is. If you're not an Office user, then yes, this is way too expensive. The Nexus 7, and now I guess the Nexus 10 that's coming out, and the Mac, the iPad Mini are better choices because of the hundreds of thousands of apps on those ecosystems that just are missing from the Surface.
Do you think that because it doesn't have Microsoft Outlook, that Microsoft is actually just trying to get out of the email game a little bit, or
no? I think they'll probably bring a service pack that has more functionality. I mean, there's plenty of holes in the Surface ecosystem, in the Windows 8 ecosystem. They'll get filled pretty quickly, though, I think. They're going to sell a lot of Windows 8. And even if Windows 8 is a total failure and, bombers out there saying they're going to sell 400 million copies of Windows 8, let's say it's a total failure and they only sell 50 million. That still is enough to cause a lot of developers to get sucked into that ecosystem and build for it and fill in these holes. And certainly the Office team, I'm sure, is getting yelled at to fill in that hole and put Outlook on the Surface.
So do you think they rushed it, or why would they put it out there, or is it just the precursor to the Pro Edition, the Intel-based one?
Well, there's a lot of, and that's part of the problem.
What do the user design guys say? I mean, it's to me the Microsoft experience is about Office.
He showed me the email app, and it looked pretty good. He was saying this is a good email app. I use it all the time. I have a feeling if you're an enterprise guy, first of all, enterprise guys are going to hold off on deciding about Windows 8 for a while. They always do this, right? They don't jump in. How many enterprises got Windows 7 the first day, right? Very few. And there's going to be a lot of resistance to Windows 8 in the enterprise because of the different completely different look and feel, and the training issues and the confusion issues, and there's going to be major resistance, I think, from the enterprise ongoing Windows 8. On the other hand, this is going to bring in a user that might have been considering an iPad, and I've already started hearing of companies who are going with Surfaces mostly because of Office. Their workers are mostly in Excel and PowerPoint and Exchange, so Outlook is missing, but the other pieces of it are mostly there, and it is pretty competent at that. So I don't know. It's sort of an interesting third entrant. I interviewed Aaron Levie from Box, and I asked him on stage last Saturday what he thought of this, and he said he likes it. He as a developer, he's going to support it. He said he wants the market to split up into three pieces, and he wants a third to go Microsoft, Google, and Apple. He said that's actually the best situation for a developer, because he sees it as a competitive advantage, because he knows SharePoint is never going to get really excited about supporting Android or Apple, where his company can support all three and get excited by that and become a dramatically even bigger company than it is.
Yeah, he's right about that. I mean, the more fragmented it is in the world, I mean, it hurts the customers, but for his company, it certainly is. He can develop, three versions of the same thing, which is, and
I'm not sure that it hurts the customers. It makes building a company more expensive, and I was hanging out with TechStars yesterday with these two people startups, and they really are struggling with this world. In fact, I'm very shocked that there's a resistance to mobile on a lot of these startups, and they have to make a tough choice because they have to get something out, and so many of them are still supporting the web first, and I think that's a bad choice to make for a small two-person startup. I think Instagram was the right way to go, which was do a mobile-first company, build on one of the platforms. I don't even care which platform you pick. I still think iOS is a better one, but Android is clearly a good choice today, and that's a change in the market over the last 6 months. And build for that one platform, prove that you have a business, and then as you get more funding and you convince people that you're cool, you're going to be able to hire developers in the other platform and move your thing that you proved is cool and is getting usage to those other platforms. And then you can draft off of what Levie at box.net is doing, or box.com. Does that sound right,
John?
Kevin was
did you
saying,
have
well,
any thoughts that you had interjected that we lost?
Kevin, I think.
Well, I was saying that the difficulty with that is you're picking one platform, and it depends what you're trying to build. If you're trying to build something that's very, very integrated and tightly focused with a particular feature of the device, like the camera, which is what Instagram did, then that can make some sense. If you're trying to build something that relies on a network effect, you should at least do a minimal HTML version that will run on everything. This is what Foursquare did very successfully. They launched with an iOS app, but with a working HTML5. It wasn't even HTML5, HTML app that ran on everything, including crappy old phones. It's still up there if you go to m.foursquare.com, and you can see it. It still works, and it looks like 5 years old now, because it is. But that meant that people who weren't using the target device were able to interact with those people as well. And depending on what you're trying to build, that may be important. A lot of this is sort of false dichotomy stuff. Should we do native? Should we do web? And the question is more, what are you trying to build and who are you trying to reach? And if you're trying to reach everyone, then you need to do web. And even if you're not, it's worth doing something there so that people can understand it. Instagram did about the smallest thing they possibly could, which was, here's the photograph, download the app on the web, but they did that much so that and they also made sure they coupled themselves into the social sharing ecosystem, so that all these Instagram photographs were showing up on Facebook and Twitter and elsewhere, and the link went back to there, and that drove people back to the app. And that was a very big part of creating the sense of importance, that there was something going on there that drove the people to it.
Well, the reason that Instagram is successful, I think, is because I've watched my 11-year-old, almost 12-year-old. She uses it basically as a Twitter replacement. She's established. She's got 3,000 followers. She takes pictures. People like Justin Bieber's cousin follow her because they like the picture, and all of a sudden, it develops the same kind of star system that Twitter developed originally. So I'm not sure that there's much more to Instagram than that.
I just took a photo of Kevin with Instagram.
Did a very good job of creating an intimate feel around photographs that were actually public, and part of that was that you access it only through the mobile app, and there wasn't any browsing or exploration on the website of it, and that's starting to change now as they plug it more into Facebook. But there was definitely that you always had the sense of Instagram that you were following a few small number of people, and there were more people out there, but the popular page wasn't that much of a big part of it, as far as I could tell.
No, I liked watching. I still like watching the popular page because it picked really interesting photos. And the search on Instagram is becoming more and more important. Certainly, it was important this week during Hurricane Sandy, because people were posting pictures to Instagram, tagging them with Sandy, and then you could search for them. And there was, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of photos that were posted, and it was really a great news stream to watch. And many of those photos got reprinted in the mass media, so the mass media was watching it as well and spreading those images around.
Joshua, did you say something?
Oh no, I just was going to add that they used the hashtag Instacane, I believe, for the photos, which is kind of cheeky a little bit, but obviously people are interested in those photos to begin with.
My thought is that Instagram is becoming the new Twitter among the under 15 set, and that as a result, those people, when they get a little older, are going to be they're going to have a very targeted social graph like Twitter does for expert users, going back to the early adopters. And I think they're going to become a force. In fact, I think they're going to take over Facebook from the inside out. Robert?
I've always said something like that. Facebook is a media engine today. It's a full-on media engine, and people still are struggling to understand that. Most people, when you ask them about what do you think Facebook is, and they talk about, well, it's a way for my drinking buddies to share photos with each other, or it's a way for me to see my daughter's pictures or my son's pictures or my close personal friends' pictures. But for me, it's a full-on media engine that can be played with and can be it's a filtering engine. It's a media messaging delivery engine. It's quite interesting. And these messages, this engine works when it knows more about you. And one photo on Instagram is worth about 4 to 18 likes. And likes are the the way that the engine works. The more likes that Facebook has about what you like in life, the better it can bring media to you. And I'm playing a lot with the likes, but I think when Instagram does integrate back into Facebook, if it can bring that data about you based on the photos you took, and here's an explanation. If I take a picture, let's say at the Golden Gate Bridge of you, it tells the system something about you. Or if I take a picture at a Chinese restaurant, it tells the system something about you. Now, all of a sudden, it knows that you like Chinese food, and it joins the social graphs of those two people because I tag you in the photo, and underneath the photo, there's people typing and putting a lot of metadata about that photo. And each time somebody comments on a photo, they can add potentially more likes or data about who you are and what you like. And that helps. That can help this filtering engine that Facebook has built refilter and bring you more interesting stuff. So if you take a picture at Squaw Valley, for instance, now all of a sudden you're going to see an item from Squaw Valley every couple of weeks because it knows you like skiing, and it can bring other resorts to you, other advertising, because all of a sudden you've told the engine, oh, this guy was at Squaw Valley in January with friends, and they were talking about skiing and shredding K2. Now all of a sudden I know he's an advanced skier. I know where he was on the mountain, right? Because it's all geocoded, and that's powerful for Facebook. That's why.
What I'm hearing when you say that is, these are all overt signals and metadata that's being attributed to or wrapped around one of these objects. But what I think that you're onto something here, which is that if you combine the camera with the GPS, you have some context, so that what appears to be a photo site like Instagram is probably actually much more of a social engineering thing. If you combine the sort of capabilities of highlight using GPS to describe people in a certain orbit, and as you develop apps that are using push notification to indicate engagement or activity across, more virtual groups, those kinds of metadata can be pumped out into the stream, and it can become effectively, somebody, let's just say, if you look at that vision a little further, somebody is listening to something and they are triggered by some filtering that indicates to them that some of the people that they're working with or are constructing ideas with are doing something which might be of interest to you, and they suddenly eavesdrop. And then if you put some data into the stream, it's almost like the conversation that we're having being orchestrated and developed according to these kinds of near field but near people communications kind of thing. John Toshek, what do you think about that?
I think the metadata is the most important thing. I'm not so much into the photo sharing as most of the world apparently, but it's a really interesting phenomenon. But I think you're right. The reason that, people have always taken photos, and people have always shared them in some capacity, whether it's through a photo album or whatever. But there was never really a ton of metadata. The metadata, I guess, was the oral history of the photos in the old days. And we're just amplifying that now to a whole new level and putting lots of data around that. That's happening not just with photos, but with everything. Everything that's entered into a system, it could be any kind of data object, is all going to have metadata around it that gives it the context that makes it valuable inside the enterprise. So yeah, it's training people. So these people who are, your daughter, your nearly 12-year-old who has all the followers, and Justin Bieber's cousin is, that's pretty amazing actually. She's going to grow up expecting this kind of stuff, right? When she gets into the enterprise, when she gets into college, it's going to just be there.
She is in the enterprise because that's an enterprise application that she's interacting with. I guess I'm saying here, just to sort of amplify what you just said, is that the picture itself is not being wrapped by metadata. The picture is one of the pieces of metadata that is wrapping the complex object.
Right, with the complex object being the interactions between people. That's the sort of messy thing we're trying to make sense of. And feeding in photographs is a sort of high bandwidth way of getting information to humans, but coming with that is the location data and the timestamp data and the other stuff that goes with that, and obviously the friend connections that each of those individuals have, the likes and the shares. That means that there is this sort of stream of correlations between people that have information derived from them.
Yeah, so if you took that into a very specific use case, Polaroid was really popular in the insurance companies for automobiles, where they take a picture of the car, with their Polaroid, and it was one of the business purposes that led to Polaroid's success and ultimately its failure. But now, that's just one part of the system where you're connecting you're connecting the automobile dealer, the service agent, and the consumer, and of course, the insurance part, with this data. The pictures is not the most important part here. It becomes a referenceable object later. The metadata is all the stuff that happens in an accident when you report it and bring it into the claims adjuster, if you even need to do that anymore. Maybe you just take the picture and then your insurance claim is solved. I don't know.
Well,
It's very interesting what can happen there.
if you think about these Google Glasses that are coming out, they're going to be able to record images, all day long. And that's why I like this app called Light that I've been playing with, because I can scrub through those images really quickly. And I'm sure they're going to move this to Android as well soon, so people like Kevin can play with it. But let me just show you what this thing looks like. It lets you scrub through the images in really, really quick time. And also, there's a search engine underneath this, which they haven't yet exposed. But you're going to be able to tell it things like, show me all images when I was with Kevin Marks, and it'll rebuild that film strip with all those images. And then I'll be able to re-scrub through that. I think we're about to head into a world where we're going to record a constant stream of images all day long, or have a very easy method with these glasses to take new images. And so we're going to capture a lot more about our lives than we have in the past. And using big data systems like Light built, it's built on Cassandra along with a couple of other technologies. We're going to be able to pull those images out in new and unexpected ways, which will be quite fascinating to watch.
Okay, so we've got an election that's about to happen, thank God. And how do you see this kind of technology, point influencing future elections, or is there any evidence that it's influencing what's going on this week on Tuesday?
Well, certainly with the storm, you're seeing, just on my Facebook, you're seeing a constant flood. In fact, here's some new ones, of images based on, FEMA, please help us, right? That are getting to people's social streams. And that certainly has had to have had an effect. Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, getting together with Obama changed the dialogue in the presidential election with days to go. And it'll be interesting to see how it works out. Bloomberg just endorsed Obama yesterday, and he said it's all about global warming now. And they weren't discussing global warming before this storm at all. Both candidates were ignoring it. So something has changed, and certainly that's shown up on my social networks, both on Twitter and Google Plus and Facebook. And so I think it's having an effect. But how big that effect is, we'll find out next week.
Well, what do you think the effect's going to be?
I think Obama's going to win, and I think it's going to be not as close as it would have been without this storm. And the storm dramatically changed our dialogue on these social networks. And now we're talking about a different set of things than we were a week ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason that Bloomberg endorsed the president was because he saw how what's his name, Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, and Obama interacted with each other, which was very much in a social type of conversation, and the way that they both interacted with their constituents. It really kind of leveled the playing field and took it out of the, as Christie said, that they were both doing their job, which was to, provide a layer of communication between the people that need help and the people that can provide it.
Well, I think that's right. I think, one of the things that Romney's been running on has been, I'm the competent organizer who can get things done. And that's a big part of his pitch, the managerial pitch, that he's
Uh-oh.
opportunity for Obama to step up and say, well, guess what, I'm running things at the moment. So I can see that was a big part of it. Also, the global warming issue. Both candidates have been stomping around coal-powered stations in marginal states and saying, yes, we love coal because that's where the election's being decided, and hopefully this will help them back away from that a bit when whoever gets elected gets into office.
Right. I also think what Chris Christie did, I think, is really interesting. What he essentially did was to position himself as a post-Obama candidate, and he did kind of in real time what Bloomberg did a couple of years ago, which is move from being a Republican to being an independent. He's just basically, capturing the large center. He's going to be very difficult to beat in 2016, given the fact that I think it'll be a competition between him and Hillary Clinton, and I think it'll be a very interesting race to see whether Hillary can pivot to the center the way that Christie just pivoted to the left center.
We're not going to start the next election now, are we? Oh, no.
Well, I hope so, because that would mean that this one's over.
Well, there is that.
John Toshek, what do you think?
About 2016?
Or just about the
leap year.
Dynamic of social interacting with the presidential campaign. Beyond the obvious stuff, what's really going on here?
What's really going on? I think social's amplifying all these signals that have been there, and it's been clear from the beginning that Obama has been very social. If you think about it, 4 years ago, a little bit more than 4 years ago, he was right on board with social. And then he launched that first 100 Days campaign, which was a social site to get, in the first 100 days, to get people to volunteer within the first 100 days of office. And it's a pretty amazing social thing that happened. He's been on top of that. I don't know. I think when there's a storm that happened, it's affected millions of people and in dramatic and less dramatic ways, like from everything from waiting from the in gas stations to fuel. That was
Sorry.
really I like it. That would wake me up. But yeah, I think that the timing it has two effects. One, it's what you just said. The other is that a lot of people may not be able to get to vote, and they tend to be on coastal states. And coastal states, especially the closer to the coast you get, can't vote. Maybe they can't vote, or maybe they don't want to, or maybe I don't know. That may have an impact on the election too. Although I don't think it's going to dramatically change anything. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's a very interesting thing. I don't think it's going to be that close either. I think there are a lot of states, the electorate will be close. I think the popular will go Obama for sure.
Well, I think I think it's beyond just the sort of rudimentary social signals being amplified. I think that there's things are now occurring in such real time. I mean, essentially the election is going to boil down to how people saw Romney react when he had his facts wrong in the second debate, which I think was the moment when Obama basically steadied his base, and then the next thing that happened was, I think the most important moment of George W. Bush's presidency was the
pregnancy
when he stood on top of the rubble at the World Trade Center and with his arm around one of the workers in his hard hat. You suddenly visually and viscerally connected with a president who was not that well liked or appreciated by people other than on the right. And I think he made a connection there. And I think that Romney, to the contrary, I think that when people saw him up close, trying to capitalize and move to Ohio to try and take advantage of the fact that Obama had to do his job, I think that he really hurt himself in a very, very fundamental way. And I think that what Chris Christie then said, which was basically, I don't care about that presidential campaign stuff right now. This is, it was just the kind of moment in time that is more than amplified. It's basically we're all sort of interacting in real time with this stuff now with these portable devices. We're communicating with our loved ones. We know where everybody is. We see their alerts come up on the screen.
Yeah, there was millions of tweets.
Agreeing. Go ahead.
Well, there's millions of tweets per hour, if I remember the story right, or about the storm. So we're all using this stuff. In fact, some of the images that really were interesting were the people crowded around power supplies at a Starbucks, all sharing power to recharge their cell phones so that they could get back online and participate the way we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that we were going to get political here, but I mean, if you look at the job approval ratings, they've stayed pretty steady throughout, but they show just slight upticks up since the storm, and since the debates, actually, slight upticks up. I mean, it's still 50-50, 50% approve, 50% disapprove. So that's I think it really is only an amplification. I don't think he's made a real connection with these things, not to me anyway. And I'm where my stance is here. But it's just an amplifier of something that people already know and feel. Now it's whether the voters turn out. That's the biggest thing.
Right, but people don't turn out unless they have a reason to turn out, and I think that they're being given reasons. Romney and particularly his running mate made a big deal about how they think FEMA is a waste of money. Those people on the ground in New Jersey, they were talking to the guy from FEMA as much as Chris Christie or Obama, because. This guy's the difference between them, their kids getting back to school, them finding a place to rebuild. I mean, it's fundamentally, I guess I agree that there's amplification involved here, but there's also, moving from social to engagement to action, and if you have a small but significant shift, small in terms of a percentage, 2 points at the presidential race, when most of the undecided have made their decision in basically a toss-up. It's the difference between who wins the election or not, and this is all happening like right now. Okay, well, that's what I think.
All right. Well, I've got to go. So, great
All right,
show.
well, I'm going to call this on account of pain, if not rain. I want to thank our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. I want to thank our intrepid forces, Rackspace and particularly Rob Legess, for supporting the show. I want to thank Newtek and their TriCaster. I want to thank LTE in all of its forms for continuing to bridge the gap as we move around. I want to thank Robert Scoble. Thanks, Robert. I want to thank John Tasha. Thanks, John.
Good to be here, Steve.
I want to thank Kevin Marks.
Thank you too. See you next week.
All right. Well, as to when, we might try something on Monday. Maybe something after this election, since it's getting pretty exciting. Uh, Thanks to
Tuesday night.
everybody who showed up, including us. We'll see you again next time. Bye bye.